Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock on Wall Street and stocks are diving 800 points lower as trade fears flare up once again. President Trump tweeting that he is a tariff man if trade talks with China fall apart. That sent investors running for cover. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Bartiromo in today for Neil Cavuto. This is your world. President Trump's market-rattling tweet coming after Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin told me China will have to pay up if it does not play ball.
This is not about making commitments to things, that are pie in the sky over the next 2 or 3 years. Our expectation is there will be specific deliverables, there will be specific timelines, and that we have an agreement that there will be penalties if China does not meet those timelines and those commitments.
And the penalties being what? The tariffs to go back in place?
Tariffs, but without reciprocal tariffs, attacking us.
So is this what investors are expecting going forward? We want to bring in market watcher right now, Dan Geltrude, along with Maddie Duppler from the National Taxpayers Union. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. Your reaction to this serious sell-off this afternoon?
I think it's ridiculous, Maria. I think that this sell-off is a complete overreaction. When you look at what's going on here, what's changed? Actually, all we've gotten has been good news. We're far better off today than we were weeks ago, yet the market is reacting so negatively simply because Trump referred to himself as a tariff man. All he's simply saying is he's willing to use tariffs to bring the Chinese to the table, and if that doesn't work, he's going to keep doing it until they bend.
Maybe, but you know that many people look at tariffs as a tax on the American people. So when you have tariffs in place, does that necessarily mean that other countries are paying those tariffs? But at the end of the day, it means it falls on the backs of American consumers.
It's clearly a tax, Maria. There's no question about it. But we have to look at it this way. This is short-term pain for long-term gain. President Trump is the only one who's actually taken China on. It wasn't going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. We have to stay the course.
Well, that's true, Maddie. These are real structural issues that we're talking about.
Of course.
Whether or not China is going to make a change in terms of stealing intellectual property, forcing the technology transfer. How do you see it?
I mean, I absolutely agree that this is a pervasive issue that the Trump administration has been willing to take on when no one else has. However, I think it's a mistake to read this as just in response to a Trump tweet. What this is right now is the market taking Donald Trump seriously, but not literally. Over the last 24 hours, what the markets have been doing have been looking for some kind of corroboration from both China and the administration about a deal that was struck on Saturday. Right now, we don't have any specifics. I think Mnuchin's comments to you earlier were what's been alarming the market a little bit more, which is that we don't know what this deal actually looks like. There are a couple things that could happen that I think could be a market positive. One would be knowing if auto tariffs were actually going down and to what extent. Remember that we've got retaliatory tariffs from China on United States auto products, and that raised them all the way up to 40%. So when Trump says they're coming down, are they coming back down to 15% like they are the rest of the world? We don't know. But we also need to know what kind of market access the Chinese government is going to give to the United States for its ag and energy products. Those kinds of specifics are crucial to find out. And so far, we haven't heard anything from the Chinese after Saturday's dinner.
Let me go ahead, Jan.
Well, we're just starting the process. I mean, we're only a couple days into this.
I mean, the problem is, though, the clock is ticking, right? According to Donald Trump, the time clock started on Saturday.
We have 90 days. We're 2 or 3 days in. Let's give it a little bit of a chance. Look, Peter Navarro said earlier today that he sat there with Donald Trump and President Xi. President Xi went through 142 points that the United States put forth. He went through every single one and address them. Is Peter Navarro lying?
Well,
I don't think so.
And by the way, it's 90 days beginning January 1, because that was when the new tariffs were supposed to go in. So you've got some wiggle room.
The administration is saying it's 90 days since Saturday. They said that we are off to the races now and the time clock has started and we're negotiating now. And what I'm not arguing that it isn't a long list that we're trying to confront here or that 142 things weren't decided about. What I'm saying is that the market needs some kind of reassurance beyond just tweets from the president. They need some kind of evidence that we'll see actual changes.
Let me bring in Charlie Gasparino, who's been calling around Wall Street this afternoon. And Charlie, there wasn't really one major catalyst that caused this market other than that tweet. What are you hearing this afternoon, Charlie?
You're absolutely right. It would be nice to reduce this to the tariff man sell-off, but it's not. It's in conjunction with other stuff. Now, look at the way the yield curve is flattening. And I tell you, this is key. The yield curve is not necessarily, at least not now, flattening because the Fed is raising short-term rates because the economy maybe is overheating. overheating dramatically. The Fed has raised short-term rates, but now it's really flattening because long-term rates are coming down. Bond prices are going up on the long end. What does that signal? That signals a flight to quality and investors pricing in a global recession. So you put that in conjunction with tariffs, which markets hate tariffs. Listen, it's one thing if Peter Navarro and President Trump had a concerted effort to go after intellectual property theft. If you engage in a tit-for-tat tariff war with the Chinese, with other places, there will be economic price to pay in terms of corporate earnings, stock market valuations, and economic growth. There is no doubt about that. You do that in the face of what some people are worried about, a global economic slowdown, then you got real trouble. Hence, you have an 800-point decline in the markets today.
I think Charlie makes the right point. You've got the 10-year yield falling below 3% earlier, and that is suggesting a recession or a serious slowdown is on the horizon as this yield curve flattens. Dan, look, if you're going to get 3% from a Treasury note, then why would I put all my money in stocks? Why not separate it and put some money in the 10-year? Or if you're going to get 3%, for example, on the 2-year, which is where the 2-year is right now.
Right, and that's exactly how investors are reacting. But look, I think there's a bigger picture here, Maria. I go back in this trade issue. If we are not going to do anything, what's the point? We have to, at some point, make a stand.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Wrong thing. I mean, I think the problems with the trade stuff, which has the markets spooked essentially, is that it's not coherent. It's not like we are joining our European partners to isolate China, to put them on notice on intellectual property. It is literally, let's throw a tariff at them. I am tariff man here. Let's throw a tariff at the Europeans. Let's do this here. It's not a coherent policy, and that has investors scared in the face of what people are worried about is an economic slowdown globally. And let's be real clear here. We had a huge tax cut. A lot of people are thinking that the stimulus from that tax cut is ending. You put all that together, it's problematic.
And we got jobs numbers coming on Friday. So that's a big question, too. What does that actually show? I think we'll see stability on employment, and the question is inflation, which also is not very worrisome if you're looking at long-term global growth. What I think we need to do is we need to take both of these measures in stride, both trade and what the Fed will probably do in relation to that dual mandate of inflation and employment is the big question. And I think on Friday, we'll get a little stability from those numbers, and what we need to do is keep our heads on straight. Charlie is right. Tariffs are a blunt instrument. They won't necessarily accomplish our goals here.
Well, look, we had a very good year so far. 4.25% economic growth in the second quarter, 3.5% economic growth in the third quarter. Earnings, Dan, up 29% year over year for the third quarter. But most people you speak to do believe that strength that we've all been watching will come in, will slow down in the coming 2 years. And don't forget, we're expecting that slowdown in 2020, right when people are going to be voting for the election.
Yeah, timing is, without question, Maria, critical in all this. But again, in the big picture, we may not like how President Trump is negotiating. I hear what Charlie is saying. I know exactly. We all sit there scratching our heads sometimes about what President Trump does. But let's give him a chance. It seems to be working so far.
Oh, he's got a chance. The problem is 90 days is a short time. And what I'm concerned about is when we get to the end of that 90-day period, what A, markets are going to do to react to it if we don't see any more movement, and B, what the next step is. What is the next tool?
Guys, I think very shortly we're going to find out who has the president's ear on economic policy.
Well, he put Robert Lighthizer in charge, right?
Well, yes.
He put Lighthizer in charge of the China decision.
Lighthizer got NAFTA done, too.
So is it Robert Lighthizer, who's a trade hawk, and Peter Navarro, a trade hawk, who, despite, contretemps with Mnuchin and Kudlow, is still there? Or is it Mnuchin and Kudlow who believe in much more of a free market trade policy? Right. And I can't tell you. I can only tell you that knowing Donald Trump, his heart is with Navarro and Lighthizer.
Well, look, he's the first president to push back on China. You've got to give him credit for that.
I do.
Everybody agrees that China has been a bad actor. Real quick, Dan, you're a buyer of this market. Market's down 800 points. You'd be buying this market right here?
Absolutely. I'm a buyer in this market, Maria.
All right. We will leave it there. Charlie, Dan, Maddie, good to see you. Thank you so much.